Our second lecture is basically a continuation of our first lecture. We're looking a little more in depth into homicide, what motivates people, what crime scenes look like from a behavioral aspect. So first off, we're going to look at investigation and investigative psychology. When you look at a crime scene, people who are looking at the psychological aspects of it will ask three main questions. One, what are the behavioral aspects of the crime scene that would help identify the unknown subject, oftentimes called the unsub? Two is, what inferences can we make about a crime scene that would help figure out what the person's character is like? And three, what other crimes may have been committed by this same person? We can look at four important features of a crime scene psychologically: the method of operation, or the modus operandi, where we look at the actions and procedures a person would take during a crime for it to be successful or completed. A person's signature: this is anything necessary that goes beyond the need for the criminal act. Does the person, go in the cupboards and eat food afterward? Well, if we see that in various burglaries or various murders, we might be able to start connecting who's doing what, and hopefully be able to geographically profile a person down the road and locate where they may hit next. There's staging, which is the intentional alteration of a crime scene prior to the arrival of the police. Are you going to hide the gun, cover the body, hide the body? And then undoing. This is when the unsub tries to psychologically undo the murder. This doesn't always happen within a crime scene, but people who may be more remorseful of a crime, who might be more emotional, may cover the person's face where after the person has deceased, whereas other people, they may torture the person, and that can really be telling when trying to figure out who the person is. Crime scenes can be broken down into two types: organized and disorganized. Most crimes are of a mixed type, but it is important to help determine if it's more organized or disorganized and what elements they have to help determine who may be behind the acts. Organized crime scenes, usually like murder one type of things, or real sexual, rapes that are cold and calculated and planned is a good word. It's usually a targeted person who is often a stranger. They personalize the victim. They're not the type of person who's going to cover a victim's face. They're the type of person who's going to sit with them and relish in what they just did. They have controlled conversations. They rehearse it in advance over and over. The crime scene oftentimes reflects control. They are going to bring the restraints that they need. They oftentimes will demand that their victim be submissive. They oftentimes are quite aggressive prior to the death. They will hide the body and weapons, evidence. They thought it out. Some of you may have seen the show Dexter, who has a very calculated way in which he commits all his murders and gets away with them. And they oftentimes transport the victim. Where a disorganized crime, most often murder, is more spontaneous, in the heat of the moment type of thing. The victim and the location is oftentimes known to the perpetrator. They'll often depersonalize the victim. They may cover the face. They may, scratch up the face. Put the person, face down. Try to dress the person up so they don't look dead. Those types of things. There isn't a lot of conversation. They do it quickly. The crime scene is often sloppy and random. Things are, scattered, making them more likely to get forensic type of evidence. Whereas the organized criminal, they're more likely to be able to cover their tracks a lot easier. Oftentimes there's sudden violence to the victim. There's not a lot of use of restraints because they don't think about it beforehand. Oftentimes these are crimes of random opportunity, or again, heat of the moment types of things. There's oftentimes sexual acts after the death. The body is often just left. The person just wants to get out of there real quickly, so they don't hide the body. A weapon and evidence is also the same reason it's oftentimes present. And oftentimes the body is left right at the scene. Profiling can be broken down into a few different types. Criminal profiling is the process of identifying personality traits, behavioral patterns, geographic habits, and the demographic features of an unsub based on a crime scene. Geographical profiling is trying to identify an area where somebody may hit next, or where somebody may live, based on how, where crimes happen and how far apart they are and things like that. Racial and ethnic profiling, which is an illegal practice of trying to locate unsubs based on a person's race or ethnicity. All types of profiling, there needs to be much more research to show how effective it is, because there just isn't enough. Nevertheless, all investigators profile to some degree. There are few actual true criminal profilers. There is the behavioral analysis unit within the FBI, which the show Criminal Minds is about. Criminal profiling and profiling in general is not restricted just to homicide and sexual assault. It can be used for burglaries, robberies, and psychological autopsies are commonly used in mental health to determine what led a person to commit suicide. Psychological autopsies were first used in the medical field to help determine a cause of death. Was it suicide? Was it homicide? What was the person's state of mind when they died? Currently, they're used to determine the mindset of a deceased person leading up to the time of death. Was it suicide? When it's used in more of a forensic type of setting. It's probably most often used when insurance companies want to determine if it was suicide or not, because oftentimes insurance companies, life insurance companies, don't cover suicides in their policy. So they have a big financial stake to find out whether if it was suicide or homicide or something else. So since it is impossible to know exactly what a person's mindset is, we can make some good educated guess, but it is virtually impossible to know what the mindset of someone who is deceased before they were deceased. So the reliability and validity of psychological autopsies are called into question. There are three murder typologies where you'd see multiple victims. Serial murderers are murderers who kill three or more victims, and between some of their murders there's a cooling off period, where spree murderers are killers such as the DC snipers who will kill three or more people without a cooling off period in two or more locations, where mass killing is things like school shootings, workplace shootings, where three or more people are killed in a single location without a cooling off period. Although it's impossible to know how many serial killers are running loose right now, some estimate that approximately there's 35 to 40 serial killers out there unapprehended right now in the United States. What's even more important is how many victims of serial killers there are out there right now. And the simple answer to that is we have no clue. Oftentimes, because the victims are often runaways, people that aren't missed, because serial killers tend to take people who are transients, people that aren't missed because it's a lot easier to get away with. Nevertheless, serial killers who tend to be successful over time and get away with it, they do tend to take more challenging victims over time and take more risks, oftentimes because of their narcissism and ego. Serial killers most often kill victims. They're more likely to use their hands, strangulation, suffocation, those types of things, knives, rather than firearms, because they get more pleasure out of killing the victim. Most serial killers are sadistic. In looking at crime scenes, you would, since serial killers, they think about this stuff a lot, especially leading up to the crime. It's their anxiety to offend that causes them to offend, and the more impulse they have to offend, the more they're going to start planning it, and the more organized their crime scenes are going to be. There are 4 basic types of serial killers. The visionary serial killer is a person driven by hallucinations, voices, visions that demand that they harm a certain person or group of people. Where mission-orientated murderers, they're out there and they're determined to eradicate certain groups of people that they feel are undesirable. The Green River Killer, for example, targeted prostitutes. Hedonistic serial killers, these are the ones that are seeking pleasure and thrill out of harming another person and feel that people are objects for them to be amused by. They can be broken down into 3 subtypes: thrill, lust, and comfort. Power control serial killers enjoy having total life or death control over the person. We can look at the Buffalo Bill character in The Silence of the Lambs, visioning the woman down in the well and knowing that he has total life and death control over that person is very chilling and makes for pretty amusing TV.